And it is my great pleasure to introduce Meredith as our student speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Meredith. I have always loved and hated writing. It might seem a little hard for you to understand, but to me it makes perfect sense. I've been writing for years now. From crappy fan fictions to emo poetry to abandoned novels, I've done it all. I really started writing back in the 6th grade when my friends and I decided it wasn't enough to just read books. We wanted to write them too. Now, I like to think I was a pretty good writer for a 10-year-old. But over the years, as I kept writing, I felt like I hadn't improved at all. My stories all had the same teenage girl archetype with the same dumb romance plot. I gave up writing fiction when I came here. I didn't even really think about ever going back to it. However, my sophomore year, I had to figure out something to do over the summer. So I applied to the Putney Summer Arts Program because they had filmmaking. The Summer Arts Program is hosted for high schoolers at a school in Putney, Vermont, and we take 2 main courses and then do some extra art on the side. Although I got in for film, I also had to pick one more course to take, and my second choice was fiction writing. Going back to fiction was shaky because I still loved writing, but I always hated the outcome. And Putney is essentially 3 weeks of non-stop art. It's incredible, and I really improved with my filmmaking, but it was kind of just shaking off the rust of my writing. I set the goal to write every day after that, but I'm a major procrastinator, so you can guess what happened. Junior year, I sort of forgot about writing again until spring term. Mr. Hungerford assigned our Dante class to write a story about a person dying and going to hell. I think I wrote about 5 drafts of that paper, but the final one was probably the second piece of writing that I had written that I liked since the 7th grade. After that, it just felt like I had broken the dam, and all of my writing and ideas were suddenly flowing out of me. That does not mean that my writing miraculously got 100 times better because of one story. No, I have tons of notebooks filled with unedited, unfinished stories that I can't even look back on. Seriously, they're that bad. Knowing I was slightly improving, though, I took fiction writing again this year at Putney. There were 12 other kids in my class, and let me tell you, it was terrifying. I hate reading my writing to my mother, let alone 12 other judgmental teenagers. 3 of them said on the first day that they were working on novels. I can't comprehend a high school student with the time or energy to even attempt to start a novel. I felt like I was in over my head. But when I was asked my goal for the 3 weeks of class, I said I wanted to learn how to not hate my writing. I didn't have to like it, I just had to be okay with it. The first Friday, I participated in the open reading the fiction and poetry students host every week. I had read at them all last year too, but that was slightly unwillingly. This year, I was actually enthusiastic about reading. I'd written a short paragraph the first day of camp that I really liked. It was about a girl who decorated her room with stolen spoons. My teacher, Ella, had worked with me all afternoon on how I could edit it. Editing has always been my least favorite part of writing. Even though as a Westover student I may love to correct other people's grammar, I hate correcting my own. Ella recognized that, and instead of changing my phrasing or my comma placement, she suggested I add another paragraph. I think Ella wasn't completely sure how to add to it either. My writing style is completely different from the other kids in my class. I don't focus on plot. Rather, I write something slightly more poetic. When I tried to add an event to make it more interesting, she recognized that it didn't quite fit with my story. Instead, the next paragraph I wrote was about one spoon. A ladle, actually, that was hanging over my main character's bed. I read that paragraph at the open reading. It was perhaps one of the first times I felt like editing had actually paid off. Who knew going back and trying to make something better would actually make it better? Not only did I learn that editing could actually be useful, I stopped focusing on grammar altogether. Don't get me wrong, I still don't use diction errors. But I write more for style than for full sentences. Breaking the rules of writing is actually one of the reasons I've stopped hating everything I write. My stories aren't going to be graded by Joe Dexter or Mr. Hungerford. I don't need to focus on being correct as much. Letting myself break the rules stopped my writing from the stiff feeling I always thought it had. Now, I write to make my writing match my plot. My story about an awkward confrontation was written with completely choppy sentences, stereotypically said by an embarrassed college girl. However, it flowed because it wasn't only dialogue. I actually tried to focus on anything but the dialogue. Just like we all have our own speech patterns, so do stories. After learning all this, I have many stories that I do not hate and am okay with, and I even have a few I love. So basically what I'm trying to say is, don't give up on something you love. I know it sounds cheesy, but there's a reason why so many people say it. If I gave up on everything I loved when it got hard, I might have taken completely different classes, I might have completely different friends. My entire identity would be different. The things you love shape you, so let them shape you into someone you can be proud of. Don't take AP Art because you think it looks good on your transcript. Take it because you love to draw. Don't change your sport because your parent wants you to. Your image doesn't matter if you are content with who you are. You are you, and that's all that's important. Thank you.
Our faculty speaker this morning is currently our longest standing faculty member at the school, and I believe he is now the longest tenured teacher in Westover's history. Bob Avery is 29. Bob Avery directs the choral programs, teaches art, AP, music theory, and other art courses in tandem with the art history program. He is the music director for our musicals and can be found behind the piano or organ on a regular basis. Additionally, Bob is the co-chair of the arts department, came to Westover shortly after studying at Juilliard for both his undergraduate and master's work, only a couple of years ago, where he was an organ major with a choral conducting minor. In his spare time, Mr. Avery sings with the Yale Camerata Group and has been doing so for the past 30 years. It is my great pleasure to have Mr. Avery as our speaker.
Hard act to follow. Students, colleagues, Cogitare agere esse, or to put it in a form that might be familiar to you with the help of the heads of Glee Club.
To think, to do, to be.
Yes, it's the Westover motto. And what a stroke of genius, this creation of the founder of our school, Mary Robbins Hillard. It's active, isn't it, those verbs. To think. We needn't say much about that. We're at a school where we're supposed to think. And likewise, to do. There's plenty to do here. In fact, do you find that sometimes there's so much to do you just want to say, let me be? Hopefully the new schedule is going to alleviate some of that. To be. That's the really interesting one, isn't it? Seniors, you've been here 2 or 3 years. Have you figured out that one yet? No. Well, don't be bad. There are a lot of us up here who are still working on it. I've had a bit of chance to think about it this summer, and I want to share some of those thoughts with you, and also some various observations about life at Westover. Now, in thinking about mottos, I investigated some of other schools. Some mottos encourage altruism. Non et sibi ministretur, sed ut ministrate. Not to be served, but to serve. That's the motto of Taft School. Pullae venerunt, aberunt muneres. They arrived as girls, they left as women. That's the motto of Miss Porter's school. My friend and neighbor, Mr. Rogers, name, had a motto also, and it's not, "Won't you be my neighbor?" In speaking to adults, Mr. Rogers would sometimes tell them, "Simple and deep is so much better than complex and shallow." Simple and deep. That was his motto. It reminds me of another Westover song. Can you think of it, which it is? And in thinking of these songs, I realized how nicely they actually fit together. So again, heads of Glee Club.
Tis a gift to be simple, tis a gift to be free, to think, to do.
See? But it's not just musically that they work together, as I hope you'll see. So what does it mean to be? It seems to imply the present. We be in this moment. Apologies, members of the English department, that's not good grammar, but I'm going to use it for a while just to stay connected to our motto. Now, another important part of who you be is your history, your story before you arrived here. There's an old saying that goes, in order to know how to get to where you're going, you have to know where you've been. You each have your own story, and it's an important part of who you are, of who you be. Many years ago, I heard a student in this chapel tell us of her growing up in Rwanda and actually witnessing the genocide of the Tutsi. In that chapel service, she told us of how that terrible experience changed her. That part of her history was an important part of who she was. Just last year, also in a chapel service, a student told us about the difficulties she faced in coming to Westover from the culture of the neighborhood in which she grew up. She raised our awareness of what it was like for her to be. Not all of the stories are this dramatic. We've also perhaps heard stories of a Jewish family's traditions at Passover, a Muslim student's explanation of Ramadan, a family's Thanksgiving Day. I know there are many stories out there, and they are all important, and we're going to hear more of them this year. Now, part of the challenge of a place like Westover is to bring together all of those various different histories and create a community. One of the ways we do this is through our traditions. Our school evaluation report last year recognized traditions as one of our great strengths. Because it connects us to past generations at Westover. And in this, they must have been thinking of that maxim, in order to know how to get to where you're going, you have to know where you've been. You see, it works for schools as well as it does for people. But I think a greater strength of our traditions is that they connect us each to one another, here and now, by providing a common experience. Whether it's the AA German, lantern ceremony, candlelight service, chapel line, freshly baked goods. Our traditions are things that we can share in common no matter what our differences are. Traditions are our great equalizer. And while we're on the subject of traditions, lantern ceremony is another example of Miss Hillard's genius. It is always the same, ever new. You experienced it, or will experience in one way as a new girl. It was, or will be different in your second or third years, and again, different as a senior. She created a simple ritual that links past and present into one. So simple, and yet so deep. Now, is it difficult now to be? Sometimes just taking a walk in the woods will do it. But for more than that, there are some things that can help. Some gifts that you already have. And it's a good thing because no one can give them to you. These are the gifts of curiosity, of imagination, of a sense of wonder. Curiosity. That's what makes you wonder what's for lunch today. It also can be what leads you to look at a computer program and really, really want to know what makes it work. The founder of the Sony Corporation, who revolutionized the electronics industry, identified curiosity as the single most important thing to his success. Albert Einstein said, learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is to not stop questioning. Questioning comes from curiosity. But there's hope for tomorrow. Your history may be an important part of who you are, but of equal importance are your dreams. Athletes and musicians recognize the importance of imagining the taking of a difficult shot on the field or on the court, or the playing of a difficult passage of music before they can actually do it. The imagining of it, coupled with all the hard work that goes with improvement, can get you to the next level. Our imagination is one of humankind's greatest strengths. It can get you to the next level of to be. You see, the to be of our motto may be in the present, but it's not static. At its best, it's always growing and leading us to new discoveries. The gift of a sense of wonder, I think in some ways, is the most important gift. Let me give you an illustration. Once, a long time ago, 200 years to be precise, a girl named Maria Mitchell was born on the island of Nantucket. Nantucket was all about the whaling industry in those days, and it made them rich. But Maria was fascinated by stars, not whales and whale oil. People must have thought that she was living under a rock. One night, after coming in from seeing the clear night sky shine like diamonds with the light of a million stars, have you ever seen something like that? She saw it and wrote, standing under the canopy of stars, you can scarcely do a petty deed or think a wicked thought. Simple and deep. So her father bought her a telescope, and her sense of wonder led her to write her own story and put in all the hours of study and observations that it took to discover the comet that would make her world famous and a professor of Vassar. You see, the work required may not always be easy, but that sense of wonder can make difficult work become simple. It's a bit like the phrase, playing music. No one ever says working music. Would that all our work seemed like play. I think that Mariah's work in astronomy probably did. Where might your sense of wonder, your passion come? It might have already started. Or it might be something that you haven't tried yet. A new discovery in a class. Something on the playing field, or on the stage, or in the studio. With a bit of curiosity, with some imagination, with an awareness of the amazing richness of life, you will find that it is simple to be, and that truly is a gift. To be could be as simple as that walk in the woods to clear your head, or accepting a kind invitation to take a swim in a pool on a hot day. Or it could be to follow a passion that might become your life's work, or an interest that will make your life richer and deeper. It can be all of these things. And Miss Miller, 109 years ago, still urges us to find them. So those are my thoughts, but they are not the end of the story. And I look forward to seeing your discoveries of to think, to do, to be.
Julie Falstick is delighted to be starting her 4th year as head of school. She grew up outside of Boston, earned her BA in history from Smith College, and earned her MFA in creative writing from Emerson College. In the classroom, she teaches a reading and writing film course in the spring, and she serves as a board member on the Connecticut Association of Independent Schools, and is working in collaboration with them to bring a Girls and Women Empowerment Summit to campus this winter, where Rachel Simmons will be the keynote speaker. This summit encompasses Ms. Falstick's philosophy on women and girls and leadership roles, and her belief that leadership is not just about achieving executive status, but truly about leading your life by your own design. She lives in Henry House with her dog Nessa, and looks forward to hosting the community there throughout the year as she did yesterday. Ms. Falstick.
Do you know how hard it is to always go last in these things? Everyone is so good. And I don't have backup singers, so I apologize for that. It's okay. I also just wanted to start off by saying, responding to Meredith's address, that there was a hashtag this summer, share your rejections, on Twitter. And you know, I have an MFA in creative writing, and I've been writing fiction since I was a teenager as well. And of course, all of the hashtags share your rejections were things like J.K. Rowling saying, I submitted to 4 publishers and got rejected until I became a multi-millionaire when Harry Potter. And I'm like, that's really not the point of share your rejections. So I shared that I have 4 novels sitting in a drawer over like a 25-year period. And you know, number 5 might be on the way. But the thing is, it's not that I feel like, I still feel like maybe number 5 is out there. But you never know how your narrative is going to unfold. And I would not take back the process of writing any of those 4, which are really different and represent different times in my life and different perceptions about the world. I wouldn't take it back for anything. So even though they never got published, I still don't think of it as a failure. So keep writing, Meredith. And if you want to show me anything, you do that. So anyway, so that's a little detour, but I wanted to talk this year about owning our narrative because I am so excited and delighted that that is our theme. Because really that's what we have. We have our story. It's who we are. And it's not set in stone. Sort of related to what I said yesterday at Assembly. It's something that keeps evolving as we evolve. And often you can't predict where you're going to end up. But you can have some control about how you interpret your story, how you live your story. So it turned out this summer I had a number of occasions to reflect on this idea of owning your narrative. And one idea that I heard that really transformed how I see personal narratives in general is from a comedian and actress named Hannah Gadsby. And she talked about how she didn't want to be a comedian anymore because it involves making fun of herself and not taking herself seriously. And what she says is the part of the story you focus on is the part of the story you learn from. So think about that. The part of the story you focus on is the part of the story you learn from. So if you're interpreting your life and then making fun of it to other people, you know, maybe ultimately she decided that was not the right path for her, that she needed to take herself seriously. And often there are ways just to flip a narrative that you can interpret it in a completely different way. And I'm going to give you some examples of that right now. You know, how do we own our narrative? By shaping and interpreting them. What parts of our stories do we focus on? What meaning do we take from our stories? Often our narratives happen in response or reaction to the main cultural narrative, a narrative where women have traditionally not been the heroes. So I'll begin my first encounter with personal narrative this summer, and that was with the artist Frida Kahlo. And I don't know how, I'm going to mention 3 public figures that I really have no idea if you have any knowledge of or not, but I will explain who they are. I was lucky enough to be visiting London this summer, and I was lucky enough to get a ticket to a sold-out exhibition for the artist Frida Kahlo. And it wasn't just about her art, it was about her image and how she presented herself to the world. In fact, it was called Frida Kahlo Making Herself Up. And there's actually some pictures on the back of your program, and I'm going to explain why they're there. So Frida Kahlo was a Mexican artist who lived from 1907 to 1954. So she was born a few years before Westover opened in 1909. She was born in Mexico to a German father and a Mexican mother. She suffered from the disease polio at the age of 6. And polio is a disease that was eradicated many years ago through vaccination, but it was a horrible disease that seemed to appear mysteriously in children, and it often crippled people. It was really quite devastating. So she recovered, but she always had one leg that was shorter than the other. So she wore a brace her whole life on her leg. She also suffered from a really horrible bus accident when she was a teenager, and it permanently affected her spine and caused her to be in and out of hospitals for the rest of her life. She wore a stiff corset to help support her spine, and she was often in pain. She married Diego Rivera, a much older artist who was already internationally famous. The two of them held radical political views at the time and traveled the world together. However, he was not always a faithful husband, and he was often away from home on his own. It was a great disappointment to both of them that she suffered a series of miscarriages. Frida's physical problems kept increasing, and she finally lost a leg. She died at the age of 47. So, many people have seen Frida Kahlo, in the words of one critic, as the patron saint of 20th century female suffering. She was chronically ill and in pain, she was in the shadow of her flamboyant famous husband, and she could not achieve her desire to have children. However, she did not see herself that way. What you focus on is what you learn from. She's really much more complicated than that narrative. Frida's father was a photographer, and she was fascinated with images from the time she was a little girl, both creating them and how she could use clothing and jewelry to craft her own identity. When she was laid up after the bus accident in her teens, she asked for a mirror to be placed in the canopy above the bed so she could paint self-portraits. Although people found her to be strikingly attractive, she thought of herself as ugly and masculine-looking, and in her self-portraits she played up her masculine features, such as heavy eyebrows and the hair on her upper lip. Quite a shock in the early part of the century to see a woman portrayed this way. And she dared people to look away. So there's a photo of Frida and then the painting on the back. So you can see how she looked and then how she exaggerated certain features in the self-portraits. She also embraced the feminine, and by her own choice, even if she was not well and welcomed a visitor to her home, she would dress fully each day, including makeup, jewelry, and elaborate hairstyles. So it was very important to her the image of how she presented herself. She embraced many aspects of Mexican traditional female dress that not only supported her politics, but also could gracefully mask her back brace and leg brace. In the exhibit, there was a room full of her dresses, and there were specks of ink and paint on many of them. So these weren't costumes that she used, they were just how she lived her life. They were real clothes she lived in. She and her husband had a tempestuous relationship, but she was not a passive, long-suffering partner. She loved him fiercely, but she was also firmly her own person. She had her own wing in their house, decorated exactly as she wanted, and outfitted exactly as she wanted to create her art. So what you focus on is what you learn from. Through one lens, Frida Kahlo is the long-suffering wife, the invalid, quietly churning out brilliant art that was occasionally applauded as a curiosity, the charming Mrs. Rivera, who also painted, dying in obscurity. Through another lens, Frida had an incredibly amount of bad luck with her health, but she fought back to live an incredibly fulfilling life, creating an impressive body of work that has made her immortal. Being vocal and true to her political purposes, shaping her own image and shaping her own beauty, embracing the tension between masculine and feminine qualities. How many of us can say we embrace the parts of ourselves that we despise and put them out there for the whole world to see? That is an incredibly brave act. And it's an act of audacity and daring as well. She embraced a complicated relationship with her husband and with many friends. Frida not only owned her narrative, she was the chief architect of her narrative. The part of her story she focused on was to do what she loved, create her art, live her life as art, and control what she could control. When she was in plaster back braces, she would decorate them elaborately with her own art, and there were some of these in the exhibit. They were quite magnificent. So another woman who inspired me to reflect on owning or creating our narratives was Adele Quincy Urban, a Westover alum who died last summer at the age of 96. She graduated in 1942. She knew every head of Westover. I met Adele a few years ago when she welcomed me into her home and made clam chowder. And she was well in her 90s at that point. And she was also, I had been told, was kind of a formidable person. So I was a little nervous because I'm the newbie. But she had strong opinions, but she also had a huge sense of mercy and compassion. And Westover was her heart and soul. So she really welcomed me into her home. She answered all my questions about Miss Hillary Distillingham. She had helped found the Alumni Relations Department here at Westover, and then went on to be a key member of the National Association of Independent Schools when it was still a small organization, and now, of course, it's a huge organization that supports independent schools all over the country. She never married. She always marched to the beat of her own drummer, and she always combined a sense of being true to herself while also being compassionate to others. So I wanted to share a story I heard at Adele's memorial service that really shows her narrative. So Adele joined the Army in World War II and was sent to work on an Army base. And one of her jobs was to hand out meals to the soldiers. On her first night performing this task, she noted that African American soldiers were coming in through the back door while everyone else was coming in through the front door. She assumed there was some kind of mistake, and so she told them just to come in through the front door like everybody else. She didn't realize the steps she was taking and the difference she was making to all of those men. In her eyes, it was just what was right and equitable to do. She thought everyone deserved to be treated equally. And then this never changed back, and then every soldier went through the front door and was treated equally after she made this move. But she did not see herself as a hero. She saw herself as someone who was on the side of what was right and just. It was not a big deal to her, it was just what you did. That was her narrative. She lived the rest of her life the same way. At the little church in Gloucester, Massachusetts, where she would often anonymously help parishioners who were struggling financially because she could make a difference. What you focus on in the story is what you learn. And then finally, two major American figures passed away recently. One was Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, and even if you don't realize it, you have probably heard her music. The anthem Respect became a rallying cry for the feminist movement in the 70s, and the 80s, her big hit was Freeway of Love. And there's been a lot of Aretha music the past few weeks because of her passing. She had a once-in-a-millennium talent. She was famous worldwide. She sang at Barack Obama's inauguration. But she never forgot her roots. She spent a good deal of her childhood in Detroit, and she maintained a home there her entire adult life. And Detroit is not typically a place celebrities live. I heard one story where a community member asked if she could say a happy birthday to a local in a retirement home, and she showed up with her whole band and did an hour set. Sure, she had fame and this incredible, incredible talent, but she never got far from her basic humanity and her connection with other people. And then there is John McCain. You are all too young to have really experienced John McCain as an American political figure because he ran for president against Barack Obama in 2008. So I know you were all teeny tiny at that point. John McCain was a Republican who shaped his image as a maverick, as someone who went his own way, sort of like Adele, whether what he thought was right and what he thought was wrong. He was the son of an admiral in the U.S. Navy, so he was from a very prominent American family. We just saw the kind of elaborate funeral that is usually reserved for presidents for John McCain. And before he died, he invited two former presidents to speak in his service, Obama and Bush. So there is a debate on the internet right now about all the praise that's being heaped on John McCain. There are people who do not agree with his political positions. There are people who say he didn't really have that much integrity, but he was seeking out the limelight as a frequent guest on talk shows and by befriending journalists, so that he was more hypocrite than maverick. However, the part of the story you focus on is the part of the story you learn from. When McCain was a young man, he was a fighter pilot. He was shot down over enemy territory. He was seriously injured and was put in prison under difficult conditions. As the son of an admiral, he was offered early release before other American prisoners, and he refused to go home until he could go home with all his fellow American soldiers, even if that meant he might never see home again. So think about that. It's one thing to say, in the comfort of normal life, that it would not be right to use my own circumstances to jump the line, to go home as quickly as possible. It is entirely another thing to be seriously injured, living in tough conditions, and maintain you are in it with your comrades to the bitter end. And John McCain did that. People are a mass of contradictions. And if you remember nothing else from what I said today, remember that. They lead complicated lives. Frida, Adele, Aretha, McCain all lived complicated lives. We in this chapel are a mass of contradictions. It is part of what makes us human. You can seek consistency in a personal narrative, or you can seek moments of beauty and inspiration and connection. I hope we are all striving for those moments of beauty and inspiration and connection. Because the part of the story you focus on is the part of the story you learn from. What part of your story will you learn from this year? Who are you today, and who will you be? How will you own your narrative? Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Catherine Albee, our Director of Teaching and Learning, up to present the Margaret Love Stevens Chair for Moral and Ethical Education.
Good morning, everyone. I love that. It never gets old. The Margaret Love Stevens Chair for Moral and Ethical Education, given to a faculty or staff member each year, includes the following words. The school's focus on the character education of its students is woven into every aspect of the daily life of the school community, not just in the classroom and the chapel, but on its playing fields and gymnasium courts, along the dormitory corridors and in the dining hall, in club meeting discussions, in excursions beyond the walls of the school, and between every exchange of ideas that takes place among faculty, staff, and students. This wide range of moral education does not occur in a vacuum. It requires the commitment and leadership of the entire adult community within Westover, teaching faculty, dorm parents, administrative staff, coaches, and club advisors. The opportunities for moral education arise from the daily interactions of the adults with one another and with students. They reflect the individual's commitment to lead by example and to share their educational disciplines, their personal interests, and their life experiences in a way that enhances the moral, spiritual, and ethical lives of students. The recipient of this year's Margaret Love Stevens Award is a perfect fit. Consider a few of the student and faculty remarks about this person's moral, spiritual, and ethical influence on our community. He does everything and truly cares for us. He's taught me about hard work, dedication, and compassion by example, and I'm a better person because of it. He's always smiling and saying hi to every student and faculty member he sees. Westover would not be Westover without him. One thing that stands out about him is his presence. He is always at every Westover event, and he's very involved with the community. He can be seen all over campus constantly. I think that he embodies the Westover spirit. He does so much for the community, and he needs to be appreciated. He is someone who always seems to be concerned about the welfare of everyone in our community. I think that we all recognize his integrity and honesty. This faculty member has served Westover in a variety of capacities in his 8 years here. He's just beginning his 9th. He has served as physics teacher, WISE instructor, climbing instructor, director of the outdoor program, currently our assistant head of school, and he is considered by many to have been the guiding spirit driving the renovation of study hall into our beautiful new student commons. I am most pleased to present this year's Margaret Love Stevens Award. I'm most pleased to present this year's Margaret Love Stevens Award to my friend and colleague, Benjamin Moore.
Thank you. Please stand for the singing of Jerusalem.
Jerusalem,
2017-2018 school year. Girls, please stand to be recognized and stay standing until I've read all of the names. We'll hold our applause until the end. Madeline Abate, Zoe Altamidi, Emily Benoit, Megan Bettino, Caroline Brody, Brittany Sincoli, Wava Chan, Shelley Chen, Elizabeth Cook, Lila Dye, Lydia Davidowitz, Anya Demiraj, Meredith Diamond, Liza Freeman, Bridget Gattinoni, Judy Howe, Serena Hogan, Lisa Howe, Katie Hunter, Casey Ingerson, Emma Juvan, Irene Kim, Maya Kumar, Michaela Labissiere, Artemis Lee, Lisa Liu, Julia Mariano, Atulia Nath, Maddie Claire Norris, Avery Pendleton, Annabelle Pernaruski, Sophia Pernaruski, Bridget Protzman, Ariana Kwan, Olivia Racebeck, Katie Sauter, Ihan Shi, Sarah Tomasco, Katie Wolf, and Joyce Yang.
And this year, the award goes to Shelley Chen, who does not get All right. Our next award, the Sexton Walker Scholarship Award, goes to the returning student who, in the opinion of the faculty and administration, has made excellent use of her abilities and the opportunities available to her, and who possesses the character, the spirit, and the will to persevere in reaching her goals. The award this year goes to Camille Howe. Outstanding senior. This award is also based on personal qualities and contribution to school life. And this year, the award goes to Lydia Davidowitz. Goes to a student who has attended Westover for at least 2 years. She must be capable academically and possess personal qualities such as enthusiasm for life and learning, integrity, concern for others, self-discipline, resiliency, and a sense of fairness. This year, the award goes to Kara Khalifa.